Hello and welcome, my friends, to the Born to Be All of Me podcast. Oh my God, it's episode 1, and I'm doing this. I'm here and I'm doing this. And I got to tell you, sometimes people ask me, how do you how do you get the courage to take the leaps of faith? And my answer is I take action before I totally feel prepared. Way before I have it all figured out. And so here I am. And I thought, you know what? I could wait until I feel like I have this totally figured out, or I could just start having a conversation, which is what I'm really good at. And so here we are. And if you are new to me, welcome. Thank you for being here. If you know me, welcome. Thank you for being here. A little backstory about how I have arrived in this place of wanting to start this podcast. Earlier this year, I wrote a book called Born to Be All of Me, moving out of self-abandonment into authentic embodiment. The reason I wrote this book was because I wanted to share with you what I have learned over the past almost 10 years in my quest to understand my life, understand the choices that I've made, understand the human psyche. I 10 years ago, I woke up one morning. I was the co-owner of a high-intensity Pilates and fitness studio. I had a 2-year-old and a newborn, and I woke up with severe and debilitating low back pain. I had never in my life had any kind of physical, like major physical injuries or limitations. I was a gymnast growing up. I was a dancer. I used my body, I used my athleticism as a way to cope with the stresses of life. And so here I was, really incapacitated, unable to use my body, unable to use the coping strategies that I had come to rely on. And I was terrified. Not only was I in excruciating pain, I was really, really scared because I didn't know what to do. I was introduced to a book a friend of mine had read called Healing Back Pain, The Mind-Body Connection by Dr. John E. Sarno. In this book, Dr. Sarno talks about how repressed anger and repressed anxiety can cause muscle spasms and severe pain in the body. So he was offering this as a potential reason why I was experiencing this severe physical pain. I went to the doctors, I got the MRIs, I got the x-rays, and there was some degeneration, normal degeneration for someone my age who has used her body in the way that I have. The book also, it presented a study that I found incredibly fascinating. Dr. Sarno did this study where there was a group of people who had structural abnormalities like degeneration, herniation of discs, stenosis, various structural abnormalities. Then there were people who had no structural abnormalities. And what he came to discover was that the structural abnormality was not always the cause of the pain. That there were people in the group with no structural abnormalities that had just as severe, if not more severe, pain than those who had the abnormalities. Then there were people who had abnormalities who had no physical pain. So he came up with this theory, tension myositis syndrome, where repressed anxiety, repressed anger could be manifesting in the body as physical pain. And I found this to be fascinating. I had always considered myself an optimist and someone who saw the good. So the fact that I had any repressed anger felt dissonant. It didn't feel like it really made sense. I mean, I could certainly point out people in my life that had some repressed anger, but I did not see it in myself. However, I could not deny what I was reading and that it was a lot of it made sense to me. So I dove into this world of the mind body connection. Now, also at that time, another friend of mine introduced me to, or reintroduced me to meditation. The first time I meditated was in my early 20s, and I absolutely hated it. I hated it. I was in this room, this man's living room, chair to chair, large gong at the front of the room, incense burning, gentle music playing. I wanted to run out of the room screaming. I was so uncomfortable. I kept opening my eyes and peeking, looking around the room to see if anyone else was suffering like I was. Everybody else seemed to be enjoying themselves. I struggled through it. I waited till the end, and then I made a vow that I would never do that again. And I also came to a conclusion that there are people who like to meditate and people who don't. There are high intensity, go, go, go people who like to get on the treadmill and run as fast as they possibly can, blaring music as loudly as they possibly can. Or there are the people that like to sit in a room with gentle music, closing their eyes with a group of strangers and taking deep breaths. So I was clearly in the first group. However, I could not move. I could not only get on a treadmill and run as fast as I couldn't get off the floor. I couldn't pick up my newborn out of his crib. So I was more open-minded than I would have been otherwise. She told me about the Oprah Winfrey, Deepak Chopra meditation experience. It was a 21-day meditation experience. They were having a new one. It was free. And she told me it was all about stress relief and healing and that I should try it. So desperation breeds open-mindedness. So I sat down one night, put my earbuds in, pushed play. And I will tell you that 5 minutes felt like 20. I was antsy, I was agitated, I was uncomfortable, I was angry, I was frustrated. But I also didn't really feel like I had many other options. So I kept listening day after day after day. And what slowly started to happen for me was the words started to have a resonance. They started to make sense to me. They started to feel true. That's what resonance is. If you ever listen to something or read something and you don't know why, but it just feels true, that's what resonance is. So I started to experience this. The words that Oprah was speaking, the words that Deepak Chopra was speaking, it started to make sense to me. And I started to slowly actually enjoy the meditation process. I started to look forward to the messages that they were delivering. And I began to think, I think that this has a greater purpose in my life. I think this has happened for a reason. I don't think that it's just out of nowhere, random, I have physical pain. I think that this is actually happening for me. And then I started to get really excited. I also started to reconnect with a part of myself that I didn't even really know that I had disconnected from, my true soul self, my higher self, my divine essence, whatever word that you want to call it. I started to be able to hear her. It's like this empowered version. It's this higher version that always feels safe, that always knows that everything is happening for a reason, that everything is happening for the greatest good. It's this version of you that, even in the middle of uncertainty and chaos, has a sense of calm because she knows that there's something greater on the other side. This is what I started to experience. And then in the way that I do things, when I get excited about something, I want to tell every single person that I know. And so here I am at my high intensity Pilates and fitness studio with high intensity clients wanting high intensity workouts. And I'm wanting to talk to them about meditation. I'm wanting to talk to them about the mind body connection. And so I did it. I started a book study, a spiritual book study. I started adding a little meditation at the end of the cool down, at the end of class. I started to invite friends that I knew that were on this journey to the studio to share their experience. My co-owner was not having the same experience that I was having, so it was a little confusing for her, to say the least. You can read my book and find out in more detail about that situation. Oftentimes when we have what I call a spiritual awakening and we start to change, we start to evolve into the version of us that we were born to be, the people in our lives don't really get it and oftentimes feel threatened by this evolution. Anyway, I was becoming a version of myself that I was excited about. It felt true. It felt real. It felt like I was meant to share this with the people in my studio. Eventually, I ended up leaving that studio and opening up another studio, all of me, because I felt this call. I felt this call to share what I was learning. And that's the thing about this journey of becoming all of who you were born to be. It doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always make sense to you or to the people in your life. There's not always a blueprint that you can see. It just feels like this inner calling, like this inner voice is speaking to you, calling you into this next chapter of your life. I wanted to share with you a little excerpt from my book about this awakening and how, for me, and I write about this in my book, I really believe that my children, who are now almost 10 and 12, when they were born, I feel like they helped me start to wake up to who I truly am. So I wanted to share this excerpt in the hopes that it might speak to you. It might feel similar to your story, or you might have something that is similar. So this was when my daughter was first born. They had to take my daughter to the nursery. She needed some help breathing because of her early arrival. She came 2 weeks early. My panic was eased by my sheer exhaustion and also believing they would have taken her to the NICU if it had been more serious. They tried to ease my worries and encouraged me to enjoy the breakfast they were serving. I remember it vividly. The fluffy pancakes with warm syrup tasted so good after what felt like running a marathon. She had to stay in the nursery that first night, while I stayed in the hospital room. She was a little jaundiced, and they wanted to monitor her under the lights overnight. I had also been jaundiced at birth, so this didn't alarm me too much. The nurses told me I could sleep, that they would feed her and get up with her throughout the night. But something had been born in me, a strength and a fierceness I had never known, the great mother in me. My husband snored peacefully on the pull-out couch bed in my hospital room as I pumped what little milk I had into tiny little bottles. I remember in the middle of the night walking down the hospital corridor to the nursery where my girl, Dawson, was, clasping the back of my gown, swelling with the pride and purpose of being a mother, Dawson's mother. The words, "I am a mom," repeated loudly in my head over and over. This incredible soul had chosen me. And I wasn't about to sleep on the job her very first night here. I would be there for her, by her side. I would be the one to soothe her when she cried and feed her when she was hungry. She needed me, and I needed her. Although I wouldn't have my spiritual awakening for 2 more years after her brother Will was born, I do believe her birth was the beginning of me waking up to all of me. I imagine her sweet soul watching me from another realm, waiting for the perfect time to join me here on earth, choosing that exact moment because she knew how much I needed her to remind me of who I was. The strength that was born in me the day she became my daughter is the same strength that has allowed me to embrace the truth of who I am and why I am here. It has not been an easy road, and there have been many days I have felt weak and discouraged, days when it has felt too big, too much to handle. And then I am reminded of my strength, and I find my resilience. That same sense of pride and purpose I felt walking down the hospital corridor some 11 years ago rises up inside of me with a ferocity. And once again, I feel unstoppable. I am her, and she is me. And I will model for her a woman who knows who she is, a woman who is embodying all of who she was born to be. And this is what she will know for herself because of my strength, the strength she gave to me. This beautiful cycle, a new cycle begins. I always get emotional when I read that because my kids really have given me strength to stay the course on this path, even when I want to give up. The last 10 years, I have been studying my life. A lot of my life didn't make sense to me. I grew up in a nice middle-class home in Long Beach, California. I had parents who loved me. They were high school sweethearts who were head over heels in love. And in fact, they still are head over heels in love. They've been married for over 50 years. So I had a nice childhood. I had a wonderful childhood. And yet there were things in my life that didn't make sense, like ending up in really toxic, dysfunctional relationships from a very young age, like ending up in drug rehab for a crystal methamphetamine addiction at the age of 19, like marrying and divorcing 2 times. I didn't understand. I felt so much shame about my life because I didn't have anything to point to. I didn't have like a painful, dysfunctional childhood. So it really did lead me on this quest to make sense and to understand. And what I learned was, I learned about generational trauma. I learned about ancestral healing. I learned about how patterns are passed down over the generations and how things that my Nana went through were things that I was going through. I learned about how the wounds of my parents that they hadn't faced were passed through to me. I learned about all the ways that I had abandoned myself in an attempt to fit in and belong. I learned about Dr. Gabor Mate's work, about how we as humans have 2 really basic needs: attachment and authenticity. Attachment is the need to belong, to connect, to be a part of. And authenticity is the need to authentically express and to make choices that are in alignment with our true self. And what Dr. Mate says is, at some point in our childhood, we have an experience where our authentic expression threatens our attachment. And so we abandon our need to authentically express because our need to belong and to feel safe is the most important need that we have. And so we will completely abandon ourselves so that we feel like our needs can be met, that we will, it's our survival, right? As young children, as babies, we need to be taken care of. We are these little tiny helpless babies. We need our parents to take care of us. So we will figure out from a very young age what we need to do and who we need to become in order to be taken care of. And if that means abandoning our authentic self, we will. And so I got to see these patterns played out throughout my life, that I morphed into what I thought other people wanted me to be. I dimmed my light so that other people felt comfortable, so that they would like me. I gave up. In fact, I didn't even know who I was. I didn't even know. If you would have asked me who I was or what I liked, I didn't really have a sense of who I was. In my first marriage, my first husband loved to go backpacking and go hiking. And so I put on the backpack and I became this girl that loved to go backpacking. My second husband, you couldn't pay him to put on a backpack. So, I joined him in the East Coast country club experience. It took me going through a divorce for the second time and really having dark nights of the soul, being alone, soul searching, really coming to understand who I am. Who am I separate from the people that I am in a relationship with? Who am I separate from my parents? Who am I separate from who I feel that other people want me to be? I am me. I am my authentic self. And it's taken me a long time to develop the courage to be me no matter what, to be willing to let go of everything in my life that is not in alignment with my authentic self, to have the courage to belong to myself before I belong to anyone else. So this is why I'm starting this podcast, because I know in my heart and in my soul that my divine assignment that I said no to for many years, that I tried to avoid, that I tried to get out of, because it felt like it was quite a big calling and that I wasn't up for the job. I finally said yes. I said yes to the call of my soul. I said yes to my divine assignment. And my divine assignment is this. My divine assignment is to show up authentically embodying all of me, sharing all of me with you, having these conversations with you so that you can no longer abandon yourself and you can start to live the life that you were born to live. All of you, every single part of you. I am so excited to have these conversations with you. I am so excited to support you on your journey to becoming all of you, to becoming who you were born to be, to say yes to your divine assignment. And I know if you are here and you are still listening to this episode, that this is resonating with you. So thank you for saying yes. Thank you for having the courage. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with me. If it's in your heart, if it's in your soul, if you could hear the whisper, it is your divine assignment. It is your soul calling you into this next chapter of your life, into this next version of who you were born to be. If I can say yes, so can you. So I'm here for you. I'm here for it. I'm excited to keep having these conversations. I'm excited to have some amazing people onto the podcast to share their experience, their journey, their story with you. It is time. The time is now to say yes. All right. So thank you for being here with me. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for listening to this whole conversation. Until next time, my sweet friend.